Hey all! Today we're actually looking at Neji vs. Omoi. Last week needed to happen first, but chronologically last episode and this one are occurring at the same time. And with all the exposition out of the way last episode, we can jump straight into the fight this time. Standing across from each other in the arena, Omoi removes his sword with its sheath and places it on the ground. He shrugs off Neji's leering and tells him it probably won't be super useful in this fight, so he'll just beat Neji the old-fashioned way. Snorting at the claim, Neji asks Omoi how they burnt through so many hell scrolls in Phase 2, jabbing at his potential incompetence. Removing the toothpick from his mouth, Omoi sighs and glances at Haruka, flicking the toothpick away. His eyes wander up to his Raikage and to the clouds above as he considers his answer. He tells Neji that if he loses, he'll tell him all about it. Raising his hands dismissively, Neji tells him it's a surefire win for a Hyuga of his caliber, so why not just tell him now? The Hyuga are masters of the elemental chakras, so any ninjutsu Omoi attempts will be deflected or easily absorbed. Taijutsu is easily countered by Neji's proficiency with the gentle fist. Genjutsu has little to no effect on him as well, with his Byakugan to aid. Omoi's only real chance is that sword that he's discarded. However, Omoi tells Neji that he was trained by someone unparalleled in swordsmanship. It might be a great dishonor to his teacher to fight someone who could not meet his skill, even if they had a sword. Not to mention that despite Neji's strength, he doesn't want Neji's drive to taint his blade. Neji laughs yet again and encourages Haruka to start the fight, who for some reason follows him and waves his hand for them to begin. Arriving at long last to the stadium, the cloaked figure peers inside the gates to see Haruka assisting the medical staff in carrying the loser out of the arena. Sighing with relief, he tucks into the shadows and waits for his time, recalling what led to these moments. It wasn't even 2 months ago when his master gave him the new plans. Bathed in ever greater darkness, the cloaked figure's own master told him that it was time for the leaf to be undone. The literal center of power in the shinobi world falling to pieces would cause such upheaval for its trade partners, its military allies, that the world would turn topsy-turvy. And if anyone tried to fill that void, it would be them. Held at the mercy of the very ones who crumbled Konoha from its foundations, the world would have no choice but to crown new kings. And if any other nation sought to claim that crown, then they'd simply have to repeat this exercise until the world got the point. Once they've built their roots, they won't be going anywhere. This facade of peace has gone on for too many years. If the world cannot find its peace, then they would force it. And to aid in this initial venture, his master hired a group called the Akatsuki. Every time Neji tries to land his gentle fist on Omoi, the latter shifts ever so slightly or knocks his hand just a tiny bit off. With his strikes now imprecise, they don't find their mark and are rendered completely ineffective. In other words, Neji's not doing any damage to Omoi. The Hyuga house and its techniques are widely known, the Byakugan not the least of which. If it isn't people trying to steal the Byakugan, it's studying up how their unique martial arts work so that they can be countered. A made sure that his Genin team would know how to fight someone with a Byakugan or Sharingan before they even signed up for the Chunin exams. Maintaining his fighting stance, Neji modulates the chakra he flows into his hands so that he can turn to a bludgeoning, almost concussive force. Reshaping his gentle fist from minuscule chakra blades to sever chakra points, he broadens them to beyond the size of his hand and turns them into actual fists. As such, even when he misses his mark, the pushing chakra still knocks Omoi back. Realizing Neji's learned his lesson with the gentle fist, Omoi throws down a smoke bomb with a paper bomb. Activating his Byakugan to evade the otherwise impending blindness, Neji spots the paper bomb as well and is forced to leap away from the smoke bomb. Omoi creates further distance, and begins weaving hand seals, starting with the snake seal, synonymous with lightning style for the cloud. The paper bomb explodes with the smoke bomb, and Neji uses the cover of its debris to charge at Omoi. The ground at his feet softens as Omoi shouts, "Earth style! Earthen whirlpool jutsu!" Confused for a few reasons, Because he even saw the lightning chakra building inside Omoi, Neji wonders how much Omoi was intending to sink him. But his Byakugan can still see the lightning as it forks from Omoi and through the ground, using it almost as a conduit. Using the lightning style, Omoi actually vibrated, softened, and broke up the ground. He wasn't using an earth style at all, simply masking his lightning style use with its name. Activating his rotation to avoid the coming shock, Neji frees himself just in time and leaps free from the hole in the ground. Reaction time is slower than perception, and though he watches Omoi jump to meet him in the air, Neji can't quite raise his hands fast enough. Instead of engaging in taijutsu, Omoi throws chain bola at Neji that wrap around his waist and legs. With his center of gravity thrown off, Neji can't land perfectly on his feet and falls to his butt. Wire reflects in the sunlight as Omoi tugs it hard and retrieves his sword from its starting place, revealing that he was attached to it this whole time. As he falls to Neji, Omoi brandishes his sword and swings it down at him. Snarling, Neji projects chakra into his hands, sits up, and tries to defend against the strike. Meeting with the representative from the Akatsuki, the hooded figure decided for their mission to succeed, they needed to know each other. Agreeing, the Akatsuki member removes his own hood to reveal his identity. Bandages around his face further mask who he is. But the cloaked figure recognizes him instantly, raising his eyebrows in surprise. He didn't think someone of such infamy would align themselves with such a secretive group, or that the group would align themselves with him. But on the other hand, it makes sense. Lowering his own hood reluctantly, he reveals himself to perhaps a far greater shock from the Akatsuki member. He grins with pride that the man even knows who he is. He didn't think he was world famous. As Omoi swings his sword down, Neji catches it with one hand. Though the blade's wicked sharp, Neji doesn't even bleed from the swing, confusing Omoi. Pulling his blade free, he sheathes it and tosses it away again, forced to engage in another melee with Neji. Still rooted by the bola, Neji can only defend with his hands, allowing Omoi to launch a chain strike encompassing both hands and a kick. Only able to block 2 strikes with his limited mobility, Neji is struck hard in the face by Omoi's kick and launched several feet. Twirling in place, Omoi begins performing several more hand seals, again starting with the snake seal. Again, seeing the lightning conjuring in Omoi's body, Neji sets to work freeing himself from the bola finally. Picking up a pile of sand and tossing it, Omoi performs what he calls Cloud Lightning Jutsu, which at first glance doesn't seem to do anything. Grabbing his sword again, Omoi brandishes it and dashes at Neji. As his sword slices at Neji, its angle seems to shift mid-strike, making it more difficult for Neji to guard, and he misses catching it. Augmenting his body with an additional layer of chakra, Neji braces for the impact. As Omoi's sword strikes Neji just below the arm, Omoi feels the familiar stoppage that protected Neji the first time. However, it is now that his Cloud Lightning Jutsu comes into effect. As it has charged the air with static electricity, Omoi is able to charge his sword without adding chakra to it. It's only up to him to hold the charge, but not provide it. Cleaving through the chakra barrier suddenly, the sword cuts into Neji's side. Wincing and rolling away quickly, Neji clamps a hand over his wound, annoyed that he was so lax to let that happen. Omoi explains to him that the Hyuga are famous for their mastery over the elemental chakras, but if it was a natural source of lightning, even Neji can't defend against it. Even the little shocks from static are enough to disrupt one's chakra flow when attempting to cloak themselves in a barrier of it. But Omoi's sword had picked up and held the charge of all the static in the air. His was more than a little shock to force the sword through Neji's guard. The plan was now in motion. The Akatsuki would bring their soldiers, and the hooded figure would bring his footmen. But the trouble was breaking into a city filled with Sannin and Kage, fully guarded by Anbu, a city with 2 Jinchuriki. The hooded figure volunteered for this exact role, as deceiving the Anbu was his speciality, and at the center of power, possibly in the whole world at that moment, they would take action. Channeling fire into his hand, Neji stands up and cauterizes his wound in front of Omoi, not even wincing at the added pain. Grinning, he tells Omoi that he's worth the trouble for Neji to start trying. Rolling his eyes, Omoi keeps his sword in hand and tells Neji that his mentor taught him to cut down anyone who was an enemy. Honor is commendable, but survival is priority. Going forward, he won't take it easy anymore either. Neji flinches as half his vision fills with a flurry of swords and a screaming of steel striking steel. Deactivating his Byakugan to protect from sensory overload, Neji has just an instant to dodge out of the way of Omoi's blade. As he rolls away, he attempts to tag one of Omoi's chakra points, but the latter's already jumped clear to avoid him. Activating his Byakugan again instinctively, Neji ducks quickly to evade another swipe from behind by Omoi, whose speed has taken on a whole new level. If he can just catch caught in the arm, Neji cringes from the cut and rolls away again. Growling, he focuses with his Byakugan and the constant wall of swords begin vibrating ever so slightly. His already enhanced vision becomes further enhanced when he tries to focus on one part of it, and he can see slight discrepancies, such as the vibrations in these swords. While he watches them, studies them, he's cut again in the leg as Omoi tries to slowly whittle him down. Jumping away, he watches this ever-following wall of vibrating swords and eventually sees one within them that isn't vibrating. Without a moment's hesitation, Neji surges chakra through his feet and dives forward, managing to catch that very real blade in his hands. Omoi tries to pull loose, but Neji holds on hard, even as his hands begin bleeding. Throwing a speared hand, Neji finally strikes Omoi successfully in a chakra point on his body. The disruption is enough for Omoi to recoil, and it's all the time Neji needs. Activating his 8 trigrams 64 palms, Neji launches a flurry of chakra-sealing strikes against Omoi. Though the Cloud Ninja evades several, Neji still lands over half of his strikes, seriously crippling Omoi's ability to properly channel his chakra. Panting from the wounds, Neji tells him he should have switched up his strategy. No trick will work on him repeatedly. But whenever it was that he cast that genjutsu of 1,000 swords and screaming steel was impressively executed. A combination of visual and audible genjutsu would surely leave him guessing. A is leaning forward in his seat, curious if Omoi's been outgunned. He mutters at the impressive showing of Neji since Omoi's one of the most promising genin in his village. He also grumbles about the chances that his other two were pitted against a Jinchuriki and suggests the unfairness in that circumstance, random or not. Minato tells him that based on Omoi's fights up to now, he'd definitely recommend the Chunin promotion for him, not that it's his decision. Once these genin return to their home nations, it's ultimately up to their own Kage to decide who gets promoted. Inwardly, Minato knows that regardless of their performance, all the Cloud and Sand Ninja would likely get a promotion, to improve their impression with their respective feudal lords. Grunting, A tells him in return that Neji might not be up for it. He's treating this whole competition as a game, when he should be treating it as an actual survival situation. Minato agrees. There's absolutely no question of Neji's power or even his skill. Heck, in this match alone, Minato's already seen Neji perform feats that he hasn't seen from any other Hyuga ever, such as changing the gentle fist for a peculiar situation on the fly. The boy made a snap decision and invented an alteration to his ability in an instant. However, it's his attitude, and Minato wonders whether it was the elite team assignment that caused this, and if it was a mistake to form. Then again, neither Sasuke or Shikamaru developed this strange elitist attitude themselves. It's a shame. Neji was the most promising genin of the Leaf, and he's actively flushing his advancement down the toilet through much of this competition. Well, he was. This fight is the first fight that Neji's actually been trying to win. The effort and skill is obvious, but can Minato rely on Neji taking a real-world scenario seriously? Or will he drop his guard, let the enemy get close, and then be responsible for the deaths of his squadmates simply because of pride? Rasa then leans toward Minato and asks him what the commotion is down in the general seating area. Minato rolls his eyes, covering his face with a palm, and asks Rasa to kindly disregard it. There are several nobles in the village who insist on attending every Chunin exam so they can gossip. Rasa comments on the particularly large ones scarfing down entire platters. From his vantage point, it's difficult to see the whole group. That's Lord Michi of the Akamichi clan, Minato describes, peering down at the group as Lord Michi sidles closer to Lady Naviro before boisterously laughing and sweeping a plate of shrimp into his mouth. They're mostly well-behaved, Minato mutters, shaking his head as the governor of the House of Q berates his neighbors for hogging all the food. They're branches of the main families and of more minor clans. You needn't be distracted, Minato tells Rasa, rolling his eyes again that they somehow caught the attention of the Kazekage, because of course they would. I swear, I could hear the sounds of their eating from up here, Rasa remarks with a smirk, eyeing Minato for a reaction. That Akamichi fellow appears to have a flag with the Hyuga kid's name on it. Minato leans on the armrest of his chair, appearing interested in Rasa's remarks while feeling a slight vibration course through the armrest. Taking time to glance down at the fight again, he also glances over the walls of the stadium and sees a thick column of light smoke begin to rise up. Lifting his hands towards the crowd, Neji asks Omoi if they're impressed, carelessly allowing Omoi to recover and stand. Half his limbs aren't working properly now, and he can't concentrate his chakra at all anymore. Omoi keeps a hold of his sword as he rises to his feet and points it at Neji. Smiling at Omoi, Neji weaves several hand seals. First, he conjures out a great wave of water taller than himself from nothing. This is a show of power, of the difference and distance between them. It's to impress the audience. However, it's a costly one, conjuring so much water for a genin from nothingness. The wave collides with Omoi, but he keeps his ground against it. Following up quickly, Neji turns the ground at Omoi's feet into real quicksand. And with the ground turned to mud and his body discombobulated, Omoi stands no chance at escaping. Leaping a little further away, Neji weaves one last selection of hand seals, sucking in a great breath and releasing the dragon flame jutsu. Omoi can do nothing to dodge this incoming fire, and so he holds up his arms to brace against the coming column of fire. The puddles of water on the ground around them instantly sizzle and evaporate under the heat of the flames. Even the bickering nobles in the audience can feel the heat of the fire as it lights up the entire stadium. As the fire passes, Omoi slouches waist deep in the dried mud. Panting, Byakugan receding, Neji hobbles towards Omoi, a hand on the cut of his leg, his vision turning blurry. Wordlessly, Neji acknowledges Omoi's defeat as he kneels to release the Earth's hold on the Cloud Ninja. But Omoi doesn't slump unconscious. Looking past his still-held sword at Neji, he tells the Hyuga prodigy to stop showing mercy. In a quick flick of his wrist, Omoi throws a kunai at Neji, who not only darts out of its way, but also catches it out of the air. The sizzling on the kunai reveals the igniting paper bomb wrapped around its handle that Neji tosses straight back at Omoi and jumps away. Omoi deflects the kunai with his sword, but it still explodes a little too close to him. As Neji lands, he sees the second kunai that Omoi must have thrown just as the explosion went off. This time, Neji just can't dodge it as it digs into his shoulder. He loses his smile and pulls the kunai out. He knew Omoi would be a better opponent, but this persistence is actually wearing him down. Fine. Neji answers Omoi's demands for ruthlessness by weaving another several dangerous hand seals to conjure pellets of earth that launch at Omoi. Exhausted, injured, and crippled by the gentle fist, Omoi is struck by the majority of the pellets, but still attempts to deflect them. However, Neji's used too much chakra already, and wonders whether Naruto or Gaara will waste all of their chakra on each other. Pulling a scroll from his pack, Neji summons out another great fireball that descends onto an unguarded Omoi. These scrolls were meant for when Neji was pressured, not the other way around. As the fire is about to hit Omoi, Neji sees the Cloud Ninja's body flicker and turn into scattering electricity. Whipping around, Neji has no time to dodge Omoi's flailing sword as it strikes him in the shoulder. With no energy left to raise a chakra barrier, Neji's forced to take the blow head on. As both stand opposite each other, absolutely ragged, Neji tells him he's nothing but a high-performance failure. Lifting the sword out of his shoulder against Omoi's own strength, Neji pushes it aside, and as Omoi attempts to pull it back up to guard, Neji lands a swift combination strike that knocks the wind out of Omoi and sweeps a leg to knock him to the ground. Flourishing by disarming Omoi, Neji grabs the sword and points it at the grounded Cloud Ninja's neck. Honor is commendable, but survival is priority, Neji repeats back to him. Content with the odds swinging in Neji's favor, Iruka raises a hand and calls an end to the match. Iruka tells Neji that since he's still in the competition, he cannot receive first aid. However, should he have an injury that threatens his life, he may have it fixed. Waving a hand dismissively, Neji starts heading back to the competitors' stands. As the audience applauds the fight, Neji mutely walks past Omoi, and the Cloud Ninja calls out to him. Stopping and turning to Omoi, Neji listens. Omoi tells him that they saw the Hell Scrolls as a method of improvement. It's a custom in the village hidden in the clouds to face everything, big and small, as a challenge to improve yourself. It doesn't matter if the challenge is a genjutsu that exposes your worst fears, or a riverside cliff that you need to jump across. It doesn't matter if the opponent's far beneath you or far above you. There's always something to be gained from a fight, something to use to improve yourself. They didn't perform poorly, they were constantly trying to challenge themselves. Neji considers the words for a few moments, before resuming his walk to the competitor's stand. Omoi shouts to him as he walks away that Atsui's stronger than him. He would have won this fight. The genin in the losing stands sigh at the outcome. Omoi did really well, but he was simply outmatched by Neji. Sasuke didn't feel like there was any injustice dealt to Omoi in that fight, except perhaps using his own sword to defeat him. But he still snarls at the intact ego of Neji Hyuga. So much for all that talk in the Forest of Death about camaraderie. Sasuke felt less and less of it for Neji. Sakura looks out beyond the walls of the stadium and notices some smoke just beyond. She wonders if there was an emergency of some kind, but the Sannin and Kage all remain seated, so it mustn't be very important. And that's the end of today's episode. I hope everyone's feeling the rising action. This is perhaps the first time I'm writing this kind of thing for a public audience, so it's exciting to see how everyone else perceives it. I've had some moments of rising tension in past videos, but this one is just on a grander scale. Additionally, I'm sure some of you spotted the Easter egg I dropped in there. That's for the benefit of my Discord frequenters. And it's just a gentle touch, it won't have any real impacts on the story, unless that ends up being my grand twist. You've been warned. Next episode, well, who knows what's gonna happen? Mr. Hood is in its desired position, apparently ready to go. But what's he waiting for? And my implication at the end there is that if Sakura noticed, then a whole bunch of people have. Not to say that Sakura has poor observation skills, but more along the lines of it just being an obvious observation. Without further ado, I'll see everyone again on Friday. The sky's the limit.